Okay, right then, shall we get going with our formal introduction? I wish I could count. I can't remember which week we're on, but I think if you put me under pressure, week 8 of Zoom flower class. So last week we made flower patches on bottles, and I know one of the questions was, how long will these flower patches last? So I will hold them up for you, and you can see that they're not looking too bad. So in this one here, it's my main flower was the hydrangea. So this hydrangea has stayed really nice, but this one has at the back has curled up a little bit. But the sedum flower heads, the little pips I took off, have coped really well. What didn't survive quite so well was the tiny leaves from the hornbeam hedge. They've all gone curly. And then if I show you the one I actually made in class, I had Japanese anemone right in the middle, which is just shriveled. But you can see again with the hydrangea, it's stayed quite robust. So I think probably the trick is, if you want these to last, you need to select materials that are going to dry and hold their shape. But like lots of flower arranging, you just kind of want, you know, a week's worth of pleasure out of it, and then you can peel plaster off and start again with something new. So I've been quite pleased with those. So that one's been on my living room mantelpiece, along with some of my blue crockery for the summertime, and the other one has been on my kitchen windowsill. So ready and waiting for some spare stems of flowers. So they're doing quite well. So before we get ready for, you can see all my flower foams stacked up. I've got a basket behind me ready. Just a quick heads up for what we're doing next week. We are going to be using a traditional, I almost said old-fashioned flower frog. So these days, because there's a whole move on becoming more environmentally aware, trying not to use the flower foam because it's a single-use plastic, and going back to the old ways of flower arranging. And I thought it might be a good opportunity to mix things up a bit and have a flower frog. So these are available online to buy. So I have given you a link, and I'll give that link again when I send out the video today, to a stainless steel flower frog. And actually there's a couple of vintage ones for sale on my website if you're interested. They are really heavy. The nature of the job is they're quite heavy, so you'll need to decide whether or not you want to use the flower frog, whether you want to you know, practice your skills. This is one I've inherited, so it's come from one of my ladies in Flower Club. I seem to be fortunately the recipient of lots of their cast-offs, so it isn't chock-a-block with dead stuff like it looks like in the camera head. It's just rusty with age, I think, or just aged, and some of the pins aren't quite so straight anymore. So this one's quite unusual. It's got this sort of circular sort of container around the edge. I'm not sure if I'm going to actually use this one. I may choose the one that just looks like the hairbrush bristles without this container on the edge. And if you think, actually, I don't think I want to use this technique, there's no harm in using your flower foam. So I'll leave it up to you whether you want to go pin holder and try a new old technique, or whether you want to go with your flower foam. And then with the container I'm going to use, I've had in my mind that, you know, staycation flowers, dreaming of luxury hotels, that I have got a trifle dish I bought from Pampered Chef years and years ago. I don't think I've ever used it as a trifle dish. I use it for flower arranging. It's a glass bowl, a straight up and down glass bowl, and it's got a little glass pedestal that's separate, and actually it comes with a plastic lid over the top if you wanted to seal your food in it. And I have in mind that that's what I'm going to use. Something lifted up a little bit, a dish on a leg, a compot would be another word for it, a little raised pedestal, or it could be any other container you like. I'm just mindful of the fact I'm choosing glass, and then I'm going to have all the stems and the pin holder at the bottom. So I may need to cover up some of those stems, depends how it looks. And I think somewhere I've got some glass shards. So I know that some of you in the group have access to marbles and things like that. You may think about sort of backfilling the bottom of your flower arrangement with something slightly more decorative, so you don't actually get to see the mechanic of the pin holder. Or of course you could use a container that isn't see-through, just have it, you know, an opaque container. So on with today's class, we are going to make a basket of flowers, but using a basket, the shape of basket you probably haven't used before. Normally, I'm guessing if you've done flower arranging before, either at your flower club or you've been to class, you've probably used a basket that lay flat on the floor and basically was a woven version of a container, you know, a sort of casserole dish, but made out of basket weave with a handle on the top. So instead of doing an arrangement like that, we're going to do something a little bit different, using what is called, it's called a magazine bag. When I bought it, it had a little label on saying magazine bag. So it's going to require some thinking about how we get our mechanics sorted out and how we actually arrange the flowers. And I'm imagining it's going to look like I've been to the flower market, or I've been around the garden, and I've just, casually put all my flowers in, although it's going to be a little bit more planned than that. So that is what I'm going to be using. Over my shoulder here and down below here, I've got fresh flowers on the top, and I have chosen gladioli for height, and the gladioli aren't out yet. They're just showing a little bit of colour. I've got some sedum from my garden, which is about the only thing growing in my garden, and then yellow roses. And I have also got some deep pink asters in there. And then down here, I've actually got some silk flowers, with some dahlias and some preserved greenery, some glycerined greenery, and it's gone brown because that is the process of preserving your greenery. When you use glycerin, it goes various shades of brown. So I thought I would bring in a little bit of difference there, that I could, you could have dried, fresh, preserved, whatever you want to use is fine by me. But because I'm using a combination of materials, I am going to use wet foam and dry foam. So part of the reason why I'm using my dry foam instead of just putting all my flowers into my wet foam. Now this will confuse you, because the only block of foam I have to hand that was the wet flower foam was the biodegradable flower foam, which comes in the brown colour, not to be confused with the gritty texture of the flower foam that is used for silk and artificial flowers. And you can see by the couple of marks on this that it has been used before, but I'm hoping I can get away with reusing lightly used block of dry foam. Now, part of the reason why I'm going to use a combination of the two types of foam is I'm conscious that my idea is I'm going to hang this bag up on the peg rail that leads into my kitchen. And if I've got a block of wet foam in here, it's going to make the basket really, really heavy. And although I think my basket is quite sturdy, depending on the basket you're using, I was just conscious that I didn't want the basket handle breaking off and then the whole lot falling to the floor. So I thought that would be a really good way of marrying the two together by taking out some of the weight from my wet foam and substituting some of the dry foam at the edge. Now, immediately as I say that, I realised that I wanted to have a plastic bag to keep my wet foam nice and moist, so it didn't react badly with my dry foam, and I've forgotten to bring that with me, so I may have to exit stage left hastily in a moment to go and get that. So I will have my foam sitting on a little, what they call a funeral tray. You don't have to have a special dish like this. You might be using an old margarine pot, or you might just be wrapping your flower foam up in a plastic bag. Tupperware box is entirely up to you. You don't have to go out and buy all the equipment when you can make do with what you've already got at home. And then in my box of tricks here, I have an old table knife I'm going to use to cut my flower foam. I've got my floristry scissors. I've also got some sturdy pliers if I'm going to cut down some of those silk flowers, and some pot tape to hold my flower foam in place. Off to the side, I've got a jug of water so I can soak my foam, and I've also got a cardboard box. Why have I got a cardboard box? This is because I want to make sure you can see my flowers in the basket. So you can see my basket here. If I've got roses, if I was to put my roses straight into my basket, they're not going to show up. So I need to give myself a bit of a buffer so I can lift my flower foam up. So I have found this box, empty box, online deliveries. I'm going to slide the empty box inside my basket in order that it lifts my flower foam up. So this will be fine because I'm hanging it from my peg rail. But if you're going to set your basket down and have it sitting, you just need to make sure it's going to be rock solid steady. And you may find that if you're having the the weight halfway up your basket, but it might make it slightly unstable. So it's that balance. This is when actual balance comes in. Are you going to be stable? So what I'm going to do now, having talked you through all that, is sort myself out a little bit. I need to make sure my back door, I don't know if you heard, the motorbike just went past, very noisy. I'm going to shut my back door, and then I'm going to go and get my plastic bag to wrap my flower foam up in. And then I'm going to stand up today, so there'll be no overhead camera today. I'm hoping you'll be able to see me and hear me if I stand up and arrange my flowers in my basket in situ. Well, not so much in situ, but I'm using my kitchen cabinet handles to mock up how this is going to hang. So bear with me a tick. I thought this was going to be a one-take film today, but I've slipped up there. So just hang on a tick and I'll be back in a moment. So let's get sorting our mechanics out. So a funeral tray like this takes a whole block of flower foam. And if you've ever looked at your foam before, you'll know that it has these little dividing lines in them. My plan today is to cut a third of my foam off and have that in the middle, and then have the lighter weight elements of the dried foam either side. It may be when you're doing this, perhaps you might want to go to half a block of foam. It depends what you want to do. Should we go half a block? Can't quite decide. I just want you to make sure I've got enough space for my fresh flowers. So let's hedge my bets. I'm going to go between the third line and the halfway line, down like that. And then I'm going to place this in my water on the side. So you've seen me doing that before. I'm just going to let my flower foam rest a little bit. And then I will use the other block to work out how much more foam I need. So I'm going to cut that off. That one's a little bit grainier. So I've just used that to size up. So I get rid of this one because I don't need that to be wet, and I'm going to cut this block of foam in half. That's going to sit on the edge. Like that, and then fingers crossed, the bit I cut off originally is going to fit down into the middle. Let's hope that works, eh? So I'm just waiting for this. Can you see the foam hasn't soaked there? And again, I've just got that slight problem. I keep using the see-through jug to soak my flower foam, but as the flower foam goes down, it gets caught on that shaped part of my jug. Normally, I would do this in a washing up bowl. It's plenty big enough. So I can see that the water is creeping towards becoming, getting into that dry bit. Nearly there, nearly there, nearly there. Talk amongst yourselves. So I should set this point that if you have any comments while I'm doing this recorded part of the class, do use the chat button. And we can do that. Okay, that is fully soaked. Get that out of the way. Yes, it fits in. Hurrah. So I've got a plastic food bag here. This could be, an old bread bag, something like that. Although I will say, just make sure you are a recycling bag, just to make sure it doesn't have any holes in it. So I'm using this plastic bag here. Slide my flower foam in. So this isn't going to be wetting my basket. It's not going to be making my dry flower foam soggy. And I'm just rolling down the edges. If you were worried about this, you could go around with your tape and hold it in position. I think it's going to be fine, just like that. So putting that in. So I've got almost made myself. It looks like I've got a licorice all sort going on there. So I will have to tape the foam in place just to make sure it holds. So I'm going to, because I've got 3 blocks, I'm going to put 3 pieces of tape on. And you'll notice here, I'm not chamfering the edges, shaping the edges, because my foam is going to be hidden down inside my basket. Everything is going to be placed from the top edges. I'm not even going to be able to see the flower foam. There's no sideways placement. I will try and get a sideways spread, but I won't be able to do an actual sideways placement. So I've got my thin tape so it doesn't take up too much space. And I'm going to go round. You can do this individually, but I'm just going to zigzag my tape across the foam. So I've held my fresh piece of flower foam in place with 2 pieces of tape. And I've gone over once with everything else. So I've got that little bit hanging down there and fold that in place. So if I'm very careful, I can tilt that towards you and you can see my mechanics there. So that is stage 1 done. And then we'll come to actually doing the arrangement. So I have already put my box inside and I've done a test already. I know that the mouth of my basket is sufficiently wide. I can actually get that flower foam inside. So I'll place that inside. She says. Oops, a daisy. Oh, it's not going to fit. Basket number 2. I'm sorry about that. I've been a bit of a twit now, having carefully worked all that out. Basket number 2 is a bit floppy. It's not quite so sturdy. So I'm going to put my box in my very open mouth basket. Take my my box there and then hang it up. Now let's see how this is going to work. I want a bit more of an open mouth. So what I'm going to do there, I think I might lie that over the edge a little bit. Okay. What I would do here is to pin with a floristry wire, make it into a hairpin and pin that in place. And I will do that afterwards. I haven't got my wires to hand at the moment. So to begin with, I'm going to just flop that over the top. So I've almost got like a postal pouch going on here. But perhaps the wide open basket has given me more design flexibility now to get things holding in place. So I'm going to start off with my greenery. So I have got my, I'm calling it greenery, my foliage. So this is my preserved foliage that's been preserved in glycerin. And I want to create a little bit of a flow from side to side. So what I'm doing before I cut anything is to hold my greenery up, and I'm going to use this stem here that's sort of tapering off into the distance. So I'm going to cut it down like that, and then get a piece that will match the other end. So like any bit of greenery, fresh or fake or preserved, you will need to trim off the bottom leaves in order that they stand where they want, you know, that you can get the stem into your flower foam. And I'm vaguely going to try and match up because I want a nice tapering edge on the other side. Where I put that along there, or it's just about the right length. And I will recut the stem just to make sure I've got a sharp stem that holds in place. And it will depend how big you want your arrangement as to how wide you want to put your stems in. So if you've only got a limited space, you don't want to come out quite so far. So what I'm going to do here is hold it steady. I'm going to come a tiny bit shorter. So one in there, and then the other one there. So, and then build that up just a tiny little bit. So I don't want to overdo it. I just want to get my shapings right first. And it's quite satisfying when you put these stems in because you can feel them going all lovely and crunchy. I think I finally got the right balance there. I can stop worrying about that. So can you still see that okay? You will be able to see it because it'll come up a little bit later. I'm just going to do with a little bit of green in the back just to get my shape. This is Cotoneaster, nice straight leaved Cotoneaster. With a little bit of stem shape in there. just to start to fill out that back section. You can see I've got 2 pieces coming up, never a good idea. You always want to have 3s coming through, otherwise it looks like you are making, it's got little ears and things like that. So there we go with the piece at the back. So I've got my basic greens in, and then I'm going to go through and cover that up again. Well, follow the same sort of format, and for that I'm going to use some of my preserved, well, it's not preserved, it's just silk eucalyptus, looks really, really realistic. So I've got some pieces that are already cut short, so I need to make sure I use those individual pieces there, and just start to fill out. So again, I measure this up, and I'm going to cut my greenery down short. What you can do is, if you don't want to sort of sacrifice your length of greenery, you can fold them in half and push them in, but I don't find that's quite so successful. So I'm going to cut the stem ends there and pull off the little bits of leaf that are going to get in the way. So it's got these sort of little prongs where the leaves all detach, or your artificial greeneries will detach. So I'll go back in there and add those in again. So measuring up, deciding how big I want the pieces. Actually, I think that one's quite big there. So you do need to invest in a really sturdy pair of wire cutters. If your wire cutters aren't up to the job, you're going to have a real huge problem cutting. But what you can do is try and bend your stems and then sort of backwards and forwards, and that does loosen it a little bit. So coming out there, bending forwards, again giving me that little bit of a shape. I'm after sort of just a sort of general loose rounding out there. And then thinking about, I don't want to over green this up, I just want to get a basic shape. And then thinking about putting in some of my other flowers. And I've got this really short little bit here. I'm going to have that in the front so it starts to fall over the front of the container. So it's probably a semicircular style of arrangement I've got going here. And I'm going to add in my fresh materials next. So because I know I've got a limited amount of space for my fresh materials, I want to make sure they've got pride of place. They need to be actually in the flower foam. It doesn't matter so much with the dried materials, the preserved materials, or the artificials, because of course I could just tuck them into the basket. They don't actually have to be in the flower foam, other than that little bit of security. So I shall switch these round. These ones a little bit closer, and you can see what I'm doing next. So I have gone for my gladioli. They're in season at the moment, very inexpensive in the supermarket. I'm going to get these in first, and again it's another line material. It's going to mark how tall my arrangement is going to be. So I need to get those in first, and I'm being quite, I'm taking quite a lot off. I'm still preserving that height. And now I'm going to put those into the middle section of my container. And then once I've got my high point in, I can go around and judge the length of my other materials. If you don't want your gladioli to bend, this top section here you can snap out if you wanted your gladioli to stay straight up. So again, I'm going vaguely sort of semicircular. I'm following the pattern of the other pieces of greenery, measuring up once I'm happy with the length. So I'm never guessing on the length, I'm always measuring up. So I've got 3 there, and I've got 2 more stems left. When you've got a really straight flower, I don't always like to see it coming out at the edge. I want my flowers to look as if they were, you know, as they grow in nature. So I either put these 2 stems back in my vase to enjoy another time, or I could put them in further back, perhaps a little bit taller if I'm feeling brave, and then use all of them up. 5 stems in a bunch, and I'm going to use them up. I'm going in the back there, and just to get that height, measuring up, and going in the back there, little wiggle round. So we're starting to fill out now. It almost looks like a basket of dried flowers. Everything I put in to begin with, really, really straight. And if you do you use the same shape materials all the time, you don't get that definition, which is why I always suggest that you have 3 different kinds of greenery, 3 different kinds of flowers, small, medium and large, but also thinking about your shapes as well. So put simply, this almost looks like a plant version of picking up some pens and putting them in a pen pot, and they're just all separated out a little bit. So now I want to come in with my more interesting shapes. So I have got sedum. So this is probably one of the only things that's growing in our gardens at the moment. It's on a straight stem, but the bush has collapsed, and so consequently they've been growing in the ground like this, and it's given me a little bit of an arch. So I'm going to get rid of the leaves at the bottom, and think about this. Will be the opportunity now, instead of having everything upright, to have something spilling out and around. So I'm holding it up. I'm conscious I've got to aim it into the middle of my basket, because that's the only place where I've got my wet foam. And there's a couple of leaves there, I've got holes in it. I'm going to get rid of those. So this can start to spill out at the front. It gives us a little bit of more 3D quality, and just a bit more movement and depth, really. So this one I'm going to have coming out as well, but you don't want them again 2 together at the same size. So I'm going to come really short with this one. Cut that away, get rid of the leaves. I don't want to be in the flower foam. And actually this leaf here, it's got loads and loads of holes in it, so I'm going to get rid of that one as well. So all the time, looking at my plant material and making sure that it's the best of what I've got. So I've got one here and then one slightly shorter underneath. So that's my bottom done. And then I'll bring these up a little bit higher. So looking as if they all got their stems coming from a central point. That's a very traditional way of flower arranging. Although I've only got the open mouth of the basket, it's going to look as if everything is radiating out. So I've got low, low, and I'm going to come a little bit higher, perhaps a bit more centrally placed with this stem. And again, it's going into the middle section of the flower foam base, and then coming up a little bit higher. Perhaps I can have some towards the back. Again, holding up, estimating where to cut, getting rid of lots of this green, and placing that on the back. And then one last piece, which I think I've sort of got a line there. You need to sort of look at intuitively as to where you're going, and I can see a space at the back. So cut to size across to the back like that. And what I like to do with, as I do with all my flower arranging, you saw me use my beech leaves first, then I went in eucalyptus, then I went in gladioli, then I've gone in sedum. So I'm layering it up, although it's going to be a mixed basket of flowers at the end. When I've come to make it, I've been quite measured in the way that I've made it. So it's just like a calming build-up. I haven't just gone like a scattergun approach with all my flowers. Get rid of those cuts there. And then think, well, what do we want to do next? Do we want to incorporate some of the silk flower stems? So this is personal taste, whether you think it's what you want to see. So these are dahlias. They're green with a little pink tinge. Do I want them? So let's have a look at those. And what I do like about them, they're quite a bright element. So you can see everything here at the moment is quite dark. You're quite far away from it. So it would be quite nice perhaps to have something that was a little bit lighter. So I'm pushing that into the flower foam at the edge. I'm not recutting these. These are all slightly different sizes because I've used them for another project. I'm just sliding them straight in where I want them to go. And again, if you didn't like cutting your flowers, you could bend them up. I found that I prefer cutting mine to length. So into the back there. And across here. I only seem to have 4 of these. So let's have a go with this one in there. Coming out there. Now this would look really great, wouldn't it? I'm reminding Harvest Festival time. Really, really fulsome. And then perhaps to bring that late summer sunshine to the fore, I will bring out the yellow roses I've got. And then we'll come on to the asters at the end. So I've got quite a lot of greenery left, the leaves left on my roses here. Entirely your personal choice as to whether you strip them off. I like the leaves because I think it's quite natural, and also it helps to fill out the arrangement. If you prefer not to see them, you can pinch those off. So I'm going to basically aim for a gap. So making sure I'm angling the stems so that they go into that middle section of foam, and recutting the stem each time. So I am looking down because I can just about see where that dark section of foam is. So just a wiggle and a push to get those down in position. So I kept those two were quite high. Then I'm going to come a little bit shorter. So it's all about varying your heights when you do your arrangements. So your eye can sort of travel and feast and bounce around your arrangements. So here I'm cutting off about 10 centimetres, recessing these stems really far down, just giving that extra added bit of depth. Oops, cut that one down, it's bent already, so we won't lose that. Recut it above the bend, take off the leaves, and we can have that one really recessed down at the front there. And then keep filling in. So it may be that once you've got your roses in, so I've gone sedum, I've gone dahlia, I've gone gladioli. You know, do I want to put my asters in? It's entirely up to you. You just need to stand back and think, does that look finished or not? So I could put a few more of those in, but I've also got my bright dahlias. So I think sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of a clashing colour. So the dahlias, they're not dahlias, these are the asters. So here I've got an aster with a stem with no flower, so I can get rid of that. And then these are all on it's one stem, but 4 individual flowers. And again, I will strip off the leaves and use this as my filler flower. So because this arrangement is quite large, the filler flower that you use will vary depending on what arrangement you're making. So normally you might think of a filler flower as being a gypsophilia or a wax flower or a solidago, which is fine when you're making something quite small. But if you are going big, sometimes your filler flower, the flower that sort of unites everything and sets the whole arrangement apart, that you would need to have a flower that was a little bit bigger. So you can never exactly say what size your focal flower is going to be or your intermediate flowers, because it all depends on the whole scale of what you will be making. So probably I'm going to leave it here, just put the last few stems in, and then I shall take some photographs at the end and put those into the email that I'll send out to you. And I'll show you the little, if I can stand far enough back from where I'm going to hang it, what it looks like in the position. So just those last few stems, making, oh, that's not got a head on it. Put all that out. Making sure that the live materials are actually going into the flower foam, the wet flower foam, and not the dry flower foam. So what I'll do is I'll just clear the decks a tiny little bit, push that out of the way so we can track on what we're looking at. And then if I hold that up closer to you, you'll be able to see what it looks like. That's that angle there. So the idea being, it looks as if they've just been picked fresh from the flower. Imagine we've been to the flower farmer, picked fresh from the flower farmer, and as if you've tucked them into your basket and then you carry them home. And the idea being, this particular basket, it would stand up like that and then hang from your paper rail. So I'm going to leave the video now there and say goodbye to those of you who are watching on record, and just to remind you, pin holder next week. So going back to a very traditional way of flower arranging, and I will take a photograph of this and put it across the video, probably about my face here about now, so you can have a look at what the final piece looked like. So I shall say goodbye, and then everyone else here at the moment, I'll take you off mute and we can have a live Q&A, and I'll be able to answer any questions that you've got.
And here on the last 7 minutes of the video, you can see a short segment, there's no narration to it, of how I rectified the problem with my mechanics. I don't quite know what went wrong, but you can see me here taking apart my sandwich of flour foam, my licorice ore sort, and I'm just packing it into a smaller container. So this sandwich box is just marginally smaller than the funeral tray I originally used, and I'll change the camera angle around and you'll be able to see me remake my arrangement in exactly the same way that I did it originally. So thank you for bearing with me. I hope you enjoy the video, and don't forget, I always love seeing your finished arrangements. So if you're on Instagram, do tag me. I'm at flowerstart with an underscore at the end. Use the hashtag flowerstart, and of course drop your photographs into my free Facebook group Flower Start World. That's all from me for now, and I'll see you next time.